Today, he's exposing the underlying issues that made a partnership that shaped a whole musical age so painful. Summers is speaking frankly about his relationship with Sting, the band's charismatic and talented lead singer who propelled them to worldwide fame, but whose challenging attitude caused a wake of tension and unfinished business. Despite the global success of their music, there was a far from happy environment behind the scenes. The police force could not have done without Sting, thanks to his electrifying performances and musical brilliance. But, as Summers remembers, there was frequently a jagged one that sliced through their partnership with that brilliance. The tale of their love is famous in its iconicity, but it is also full of creative disputes and ego-driven decisions. And Sting's feuds with Summers weren't the last. Rivals with colleagues and bandmates alike were formed by the singer's relentless determination and domineering characteristics throughout his career. 17th century UK. The Cops were about to break through as one of the most famous bands in the world. The addition of the seasoned guitarist Andy Summers to the quintet completely revamped their sound with his level of expertise and refinement. The mysterious lead singer and bassist of the band was quickly becoming the driving musical force. However, conflicts inside the band escalated as their fame grew. Summers reflects on how a persistent point of contention was Sting's quest for dominance. Originally intended to function as a democratic trio, the dynamics of the police force changed as Sting's lyrics became the focal point. Summers and drummer Stuart Copeland frequently felt marginalized when conflicts arose over creative decisions. According to Summers, Sting appeared to think his vision was paramount. What ought to have been a cooperative effort started to feel more and more like a totalitarian regime. There was a lot of tension during the 1983 recording sessions of Synchronicity. Despite the album's eventual greatness and the popularity of singles like Every Breath You Take, the recording session was far from peaceful. Summers paints a picture of an environment where tension is always building due to Sting's stubbornness and disregard for his comrades' opinions. Three people who had once been bound together by a shared passion for music were now merely able to tolerate one another. Summers wasn't the only one who had trouble dealing with Sting's challenging nature. He also had regular disagreements with the band's flamboyant drummer, Stuart Copeland. Their feuds were legendary, and they would occasionally take their disputes on stage during concerts. Since Sting was so methodical when writing songs, leaving little space for improvisation, he frequently found himself at odds with Copeland, who was famous for his high-energy drumming and strong views. An historic event happened at a 1984 tour practice when a fight broke out over the pace of one of their songs. The band put up a united front for the fans, but there was undeniable strain below. These were not isolated incidents, but rather typical of the band's unity in success and its discord in personality, as pointed out by Summers. After the Police broke up in 1986, Sting went solo, solidifying his position as a world-renowned rock star. The breakup wasn't as simple as it appeared, though, as Summers notes. When Sting decided to go solo, he could finally pursue his artistic vision unfettered. It was the ultimate proof, for Summers and Copeland, that Sting had always considered himself apart from the band, and it felt like a betrayal. While Sting's solo work was commercially successful, it also brought attention to the difficulties of collaborating with him. His meticulous tendencies were frequently characterized by his collaborators, who included musicians and producers. Although his determination led to highly esteemed albums such as The Soul Cages and 10 Summoner's Tales, it also drove a wedge between him and many of his collaborators. There was a sense of isolation despite Sting's accomplishments, since he insisted on complete control, which left little space for collaboration. Sting's difficult personality persisted throughout his career, even after he left the police force, causing problems in his personal life and solo work. His perfectionist tendencies, which he exhibited alongside his musical genius, caused friction in his relationships, even with people who shared his vision for the future. Those around Sting were either impressed or exhausted by his relentlessness. He was not simply demanding. he was relentless. Imagine Sting in a spotless recording studio, surgeon-like as he dissects a single chord with his headphones firmly clamped over his ears. Hugh Padgham is seated across from him, clearly exhausted from dealing with Sting's inflexible demands. This producer is famous for his painstaking work with Phil Collins and Genesis. Their cooperation was far from seamless, but it yielded critically acclaimed albums like Nothing Like the Sun and The Dream of the Blue Turtles. According to reports, Padgham saw the upside and downside of Sting's perfectionist tendencies. Although Sting's meticulous attention to detail improved the music, it also caused an ongoing sense of tension. Disagreement arose over every arrangement, note, and word. Sting's intransigence was about more than simply getting the finest sound. It was also about maintaining command. He was arrogant and wanted to have the last say in everything, frequently ignoring Padgham's advice. Particularly irritating for Padgham, who had collaborated with numerous famous musicians, was Sting's demeanor. What ought to have been an inspiring collaboration became an ordeal of perseverance due to the noticeable strain. Even outside of the studio, Sting could be a handful. As his star began to rise, so did the strain on his personal connections. His first marriage to actress Frances Tomelty was an idyllic romance that swiftly fizzled out due to his fame and the allegations of infidelity. The emotional and physical barrier between Sting and Tomelty widened as his career took off. Their marital bliss was shattered by secret betrayals and unfulfilled expectations as Sting's rising stardom eclipsed their intimate moments. When news broke that Sting had an affair with the couple's close friend Trudy Styler, it was the last straw. Tomelty was embarrassed, and their social group was rocked by the discovery, which was a scandal. The aftermath served as a sobering reminder to Sting that his own aspirations frequently resulted in significant sacrifices. Still, Sting never once apologized for continuing on with Styler as his spouse, a choice that would shape his life for decades. Although things did calm down between Sting and Styler in the end, they were far from drama-free. The drama surrounding the affair cast a shadow over their formative years as a couple. Everyone took sides, and the press made them look like a scandalous pair. Despite Sting and Styler putting on a united front, rumors of betrayal continued to swirl, obscuring their origin story. Styler and Sting frequently had arguments due to Sting's workaholism and craving for dominance, something Styler was notorious for. They had a fiery relationship, but tensions ran high since Sting was so focused on his work. But Styler was just as tenacious as he was, fighting off his controlling behavior and forging her own path in the relationship. After enduring intense public scrutiny and internal strife, their marriage blossomed into one of lasting respect and devotion. While Sting's ambition and intelligence propelled him to great heights, they also shattered relationships and stoked animosity. His personal life was characterized by betrayals and turmoil, and he alienated partners like Hugh Padgham with his insistence on doing things his way. The people who worked with Sting and his own mental health were both affected by his obsession with perfection. Sting appeared to view strife as an expression of his talent and an outcome of his control issues. His legacy lives on through his music, but the tales of those he left behind show that even talented people can be their own worst enemies. The intricate and multi-layered legacy that Sting left behind for Andy Summers is a reflection of his complicated and multifaceted personality, which was seldom reflected in his relationships. Contradictions abound while working with Sting. He couldn't help but be amazed by Sting's extraordinary vocal abilities and his knack for capturing the nuances of the human condition via his music. In contrast, he frequently experienced feelings of being eclipsed, relegated to a supporting position within a band that was meant to be a collaborative effort. Although Sting's genius was facilitated by the Cops, group cohesiveness was sacrificed in the process. Their united accomplishment was huge, Summers admits, but the wounds from their fights are still visible. It's impossible to deny Sting's genius. There was always a hefty price to pay for it, though, as Summers' revelations demonstrate. Sting was an illuminating and frustrating figure for his coworkers. His brilliance could illuminate a room, yet his demeanor could make it seem frigid. Sting's status as a towering force in contemporary music will never be diminished. His hauntingly clear voice and melodies, ranging from Roxanne's raw urgency to Fields of Gold's dreamy beauty, have endured for decades. These pieces establish him as one of the greatest composers of all time and touch listeners of all ages. That legacy, meanwhile, cast a shadow, as Andy Summers shows. His record-breaking tours and rave reviews belie a guy whose obsession with perfection and drive frequently drove a wedge between himself and others closest to him. When he collaborated with Sting, he had to tread carefully between amazement and frustration. The event, according to Summers, was a mix of energizing and motivating, just like their tenure in the police force. Unlike most of his contemporaries, Sting could compose songs with catchy melodies and lyrics that could connect with listeners on a deep, personal level. However, along with that genius came an inflexible desire for dominance. His demanding standards for perfection were sometimes met with resistance and animosity because they forced others to conform to his vision. A dominant personality like Sting put a burden on Summers and others behind the scenes, even though the band appeared to be in perfect harmony to the audience. He used every chord progression, arrangement, and line as a platform to express his creative will. Summers remembers being extremely frustrated when Sting's intransigence transformed a potential collaboration into a strict hierarchy. Sting's public image as an artist who takes time to reflect and think contrasted sharply with the chaos that existed behind the scenes. To the outside world, he was the magnetic lead singer whose songs conveyed deep feelings. He was a paradox for his coworkers since he was both very demanding and quite contemplative. Summers talks about the irony of seeing Sting captivate millions of people on stage before he icy coldly rejects partnership. Summers wasn't the only one who had to deal with this situation. Producers and session musicians in Sting's inner circle have also shared their stories. His passion, concentration, and focus are the same qualities that made him famous. The contributions of others were frequently overshadowed by his unfaltering faith in his vision. Although this strategy achieved unprecedented success, it resulted in broken relationships. Andy Summers finds the legacy of Sting to be just as multifaceted as the musician himself. Despite the benefits, there was a price to pay for working with him. Creating music that influenced a generation had its highs, but dealing with Sting's often overwhelming personality had its lows. According to Summers, their path was full of ups and downs, with periods of great creative success and times of interpersonal strife that almost derailed their progress. Thus, Sting's life is a tale of duality. He was a visionary whose talent transformed music, and his legacy lives on via his songs and performances. On the other hand, he is a controlling man, and even his closest friends and family have trouble keeping up with him. Sting was an enduring symbol of genius and turbulence. He was a lighthouse of creation and an ever-present source of friction for Summers and many others.